Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Biohacking Beauty, the podcast where we dive deep into the science and strategies behind youthful, radiant you and your skin. I'm your host, Amitai Eshel, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this journey to unlock the secrets of biohacking your way to ageless skin. At Biohacking Beauty, we're dedicated to simplifying the complex world of skincare and anti aging. Each week, we bring you expert insights, cutting edge research, and actionable tips to help you achieve your best health and skin ever. Our mission is to empower you with knowledge and tools to take control of your skincare routine and defy the aging process. This podcast is brought to you by the company I co founded, which is called Young Goose Skincare, the brand that's all about innovative, science backed solutions for your skin. Whether it's our potent pro youth products or our pioneering use of biohacking principles in skincare. At Young Goose, we are committed to helping you achieve a youthful skin like you could not achieve with any other product in the market. That is why we're known as the world's most innovative skincare products. Today, we have a very special treat for you because our guest is Dr. Andrea McBeth, a trailblazer in the field of microbiome science and the co founder and CEO of Thaena Inc. Dr. McBeth is not only a naturopathic doctor, but also a biochemist with a profound passion for the microbiome and its impact on our health, and today also how it impacts our skin. She's the driving force behind Thaena, the world's first stool derived postbiotic supplement, which is designed to harness the power of the gut microbiome for better overall health, um, and to improve every aspect of the way we live our life. In today's conversation, we'll explore how postbiotics differ from probiotics and prebiotics and why they might be the missing piece in your health regimen. Dr. McBeth will share her insights on how a healthy microbiome can influence skin health, potentially reducing signs of aging and promoting a more youthful appearance and, in general, better health span. We'll also discuss practical tips for incorporating microbiome friendly practices into your daily routine. So, get ready for an enlightening and empowering discussion that could transform your approach to overall aging and obviously skin aging. Don't forget, please, to subscribe to the Biohacking Beauty podcast on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy this episode, we would really appreciate it if you left us a review. Even one word review is highly, highly appreciated. We'd love to hear your questions about anti aging and biohacking, so send them our way and we might feature them in our future episode. Now, let's dive into the world of microbiome science and discover how it can help you achieve the radiant, youthful skin you've always desired. Here's our conversation with Dr. Andrea McBeth. Okay, Andrea, finally, welcome to the Biohacking Beauty podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to connect.
Yeah, I mean, it's my pleasure. We met, the first time we met was at A4M conference. I don't know if you remember, but I passed next to your booth. A4M winter. I mean, like in December. Was it A4M? I mean, we were at a conference and I passed next to your booth and you said, "Hey, do you want to talk some shit?" So that's how I was obviously intrigued. You have the best tagline maybe in the history of conferences. So yeah, it's good to have you as a guest on the podcast finally.
Yeah, my pleasure. We love talking shit. You can't make up the shit. The poop puns really never end. So it's a good, we decided early on to lean into it. The choice was
Yeah.
either do we like kind of skirt the fact that it's poop, or do we just
Yes.
be really upfront about it? And I think that we made the right decision.
For sure. And I would have introduced you. I will have introduced you properly on the in the start of this episode. But maybe you can walk us through kind of your background, what you are, what you are, what is kind of your life experience that led you to co-found Thaena, and a little bit about Thaena.
Yeah, no, I am not a concise person, but when I'm on podcast, I try to tend to keep my long story as succinct as I can. And really, I'm a scientist at the heart
Mhm.
of it. I have always been a scientist. I traversed traditional academia through part of a PhD. But really, it was the day that I got a phone call from my younger sister. I was 25 and she was 23, and she had presented to the hospital with a mass, and it ended up being non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I had been studying leukemias and lymphomas and working in hemonc. And that experience of navigating healthcare, she's been in remission and is alive. And I'm really grateful for that experience I had going into it with that science background. But it really catalyzed a belief that science is great, but you also have to be radical and understand the system to make change and support those you love. So I think there's some alignment there in with what I'm doing now. And I left traditional research in molecular biology to become a naturopath. And naturopathic medicine really, to me, was a way to prevent cancer in those I loved, and just understand how nutrition and biochemistry could be impacting our health. And then I got involved in microbiome, science as the bridge between my cellular world and mechanistic understanding and the nutrition and therapies I had been using in naturopathic medicine. And so the not so succinct, I guess, version was I was a scientist. I tumbled out of academia, became a naturopath, went back to science, and bridged the gap by bringing microbiome science to a dietary supplement, which is Thaena. And
Yeah.
we worked in fecal transplant, and then translated that to a postbiotic that's sterilized from human stool that's healthy. And so I'm thinking about science a lot. I'm thinking about patient experience a lot, and how can we help people reclaim their agency around health and rebuild around a paradigm that makes logical sense.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's pretty succinct. You know, as opposed to other guests of the podcast, that's pretty succinct. This is a very, I think it's a very touchy subject, probably for some people, because what we are talking about at the end of the day is a company that the product is derived from human feces, right? So,
Yeah.
um, how did you kind of arrive to the conclusion that this is the product that you believe can change people's lives? And obviously, like, my impression of it, again, as someone who is interested in like longevity science, staving off aging, is that we have known for a while, there are studies, rodent studies, human studies, showing that fecal transplants actually can improve health span, improve, the, I hate that word, but like the biological age of a person, from an kind of epigenetic and in gut standpoint. But what was your journey to kind of decide that this is your hill to at least battle on? I don't know, die on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some days depends on the day. So fecal transplant is a really fascinating, non-traditional thing that has entered Western medicine. So
Mhm.
it's fecal transplant's been used since the beginning of time in veterinary medicine. It's in Chinese literature. If we look at the microbiome in our gut and our colon specifically as another organ system, and we put all of what we learned about infectious disease and germ theory, we set that aside and say, let's assume the microbes living in our gut are mostly good commensals. They're important for
Hmm.
human health, and they're essentially an endocrine organ.
Hmm.
Then it starts to make a little bit more sense of why.
Could you maybe kind of spend a little bit more time on why you would describe it as an endocrine organ?
Right. Yeah. So the human gut microbiome, the reason we don't think of it as an organ, the average person, is because we've only relatively recently discovered it.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I jumped through hundreds of years of history where we discovered microbes, we associated them with disease, but really
Hmm.
that's a small fraction of the bacteria we're talking about. And of the 54 or ish, I don't remember the exact number of infectious bacteria, there's trillions of other bacteria that function in and on us and on the planet, but in particular in our gut, they are producing signaling molecules
Hmm.
that are telling us if we're, you know, if we are done eating, if we
Hmm.
want chocolate, if we should be anxious, if we should go to sleep. There are many overlapping neurotransmitters that bacteria make. There's overlapping hormone signaling. There's really cool science coming out about the role bile acids play. I mean, I love the chemistry, but taking a step back, bacteria communicate to us through these signaling molecules in the same way we think about our hormones and our
Yeah.
neurotransmitters. And
or
so
or
it's
almost the way that we affect our planet, right?
totally. And I think of if the human body is a planet
Hmm.
with little islands of microbe ecosystems, in the same way we have planets, we're all connected with one climate. And our climate of inflammation as a human body is similar to the climate of a planet.
Yeah.
And there is interplay and nuance, and we're just discovering a lot of this.
Yeah.
But when you think about longevity and wellness and health span in particular, it turns out that these microbes and this organ system of the microbiome hugely impacts our
Hmm.
chronologic age, our epigenetic modulation, our ability to adapt to our environment around us. And fecal transplant is just one tool in this repertoire of modulating our organ system that's maybe at the heart of how
Yeah.
we age.
For sure. I mean, we now have progressed to having different biological clocks for different organs, rather than having this master clock for our entire body, and understanding that it's like the weakest link of a chain, right? Whatever is going to kind of fail first, that's going to be the opening act to our demise, basically, to our slow, imminent death. So I completely understand that. Now, you also mentioned, obviously, cancer. And one of the I think interesting things that most people are not aware of is that our entire understanding, the seminal paper in Cell Magazine 2013 about the hallmarks of aging, really is a continuation of a body of work done on hallmarks of cancer. So our entire understanding of what it means to have a healthy cell, what it means to have kind of longevity in our system, really stems from our journey to understand what is not that, like what is a malfunctioning system, and how do we kind of prevent the different cells, different systems in our body to deteriorate. So I think it's a very apt connection to make between, like, researching or being interested in how to stave off cancer, and then kind of going ahead and saying, well, there's another layer to that, which is, how do I create a healthier human?
Yeah.
um yeah. So
For
what?
me,
Mhm.
I
No, no,
was
no,
going
go
to
ahead.
say cancer was a great motivator in that, um, it was great to have support, and I feel like my sister got really good care, but she was tortured.
Yeah.
And I left that experience as the one who was not the one going through it. And I think there's a very important distinction there. Like, I was not the cancer survivor or the person, but I was the one observing it and being a caregiver. And it really left me with a strong desire to never do that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't want to go through that. I don't want other people. So the prevention and understanding from I was in it in cancer biology, and very much of the paradigm that cancer is a form of our body being tapped out, the bucket being overflowed. We just don't have enough cells to clear cancer. It's a multifactorial disease where you have multiple things that are going to perturb the system, and genes, time, just bad luck, but also toxins, exposure, all
Yeah.
those things lead you to a threshold where a tumor gets run away. And so how do we create a system where that isn't constantly overflowing? And that's where you're in chronic disease as well. And I do experience chronic disease, and so my experience is a little bit different with that, but the microbiome and prevention is longevity and health. Like health span and wellness in the longevity space is just prevention of disease
Hmm.
and quality of life.
Yeah.
We can look at C. elegans and how long they wiggle vigorously, and that's what we think of as health span. But, I want to be able to vigorously wiggle up a mountain when I'm in my 70s.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah. Yeah.
definition of health.
Definitely.
And I really believe that nutrition, nutrients, understanding human biology and how that microbiome interplays with the rest of our bodies is my best bet, or like use of resources, right? Because there's 100 things I could do, but I have to make a decision every day of cost benefit
Yeah.
of how my resources are going to get used for me to get to that end goal of not having pain, not getting sicker, not having suffering, and not, ending up with cancer that's going to need to be treated in that paradigm of
Hmm.
chemo and things like that.
And why would you say? I mean, I completely agree with everything you're saying. I think um, targeting the microbiome as a whole is a force multiplier to then whatever we are interested in getting as an end result, whether it is, by the way, skin health, or whether it is being a better wiggler up mountains, right?
Right.
So the why would you say the microbiome is that important as far as our healthy youthful state, like health span in its expression?
I think for me, I wanted to, again, I was trying to think about the most efficient framing
Yeah.
to address my day-to-day life, my chronic disease, and or, you know, vitality, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. And for me, the more science I researched and the more work I did, and juxtaposing it with these really beautiful tools of naturopathic medicine, I was like,
Hmm.
I need a lens to make decisions. And the microbiome is both the most efficient and the most logical lens for me to do that.
Hmm.
And what I mean is, our microbiome turning over every 24 to 36 hours in the gut and on the skin. These are all the islands on the microbiome planet of our body. And they are the ones that are signaling, converting the environment around us, what we eat and drink and think, our air quality, everything we're doing, and sending signals to our body of what the environment around us is. And so it's
Hmm.
the most efficient place for us to put resources to impact that overall net signaling.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was just the most logical place to, I knew what I ate mattered. I love herbal medicine. I am from my dad studies hazardous waste, and I like read Silent Spring by Rachel Carson about DDT and environmental exposures in the 70s, right? I read that when I was really young. And so I've always been thinking about, how does this environment and the things I do have control over impact me in a system
Hmm.
thing, and how do I do that efficiently? I can't control the air quality, but I can have a air purifier. I can't
Yeah.
control water quality, but I can have a water filter, and I can control whether I eat vegetables or not. And so I think for me, after being in hospitals a lot as a kid, I had something called Guillain-Barré and arthritis as a kid. I was told a lot that they don't know what's wrong with me. There's nothing they can do, and there's nothing I could do. And becoming an adult and coming out on the other side, it's really important that I feel like there's some things I can do, even if sometimes it feels overwhelming. The
Hmm.
microbiome is a way for me to say, I'm going to take that power back a little bit and know that chia seeds and fermented kefir is a powerful tool for me on a daily basis, right? Like eating a poop pill is a tool in a broader toolbox for me to make decisions to support an ecosystem. And it's almost like a cosmology in the way that Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine has, you know, or indigenous medicine has cosmologies around human health. It's a way for me to tell a story and make decisions about
Yeah.
exercise and sleep and food and what my skincare is and all those
Yeah,
things.
for sure. Um, so that's very powerful. So when we look at, you mentioned, the poop pill as a tool within a toolbox. How come um, the I would say the standard diet precursors to those bacteria, right? The fermented foods or prebiotics or whatever we're taking. How come that can be insufficient as far as like taking care of our gut?
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of, I guess I'll stick with my favorite metaphor.
Hmm.
My microbiome organ system is a very sad island with not a lot
Hmm.
of biodiversity. It's not the Galapagos or, a rainforest, because I was born via C-section. I had a bunch of antibiotics as a kid. I just had a lot of things that set my ecosystem up to be depleted.
Yeah,
And there are a lot of things that were out of control, like of my, nobody's fault. It's totally fine if you have a C-section because you need to have a baby healthy, that's fine. But I think just understanding the way that our microbiomes have developed in the Western world in particular, and knowing that my particular ecosystem is insufficient because it's missing whole swaths of diversity, that even if I eat all the chia seeds on the planet, I'm not going to have the same.
first of all, it's a lot of calories. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that.
Chia is calories.
I mean, all the chia seeds on the planet, that's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
calories.
totally. Right. But that's not going to help my inflammatory markers to some, extrapolated
Yeah.
dysbiosis impact, right? We don't totally know how. And so poop is cool because I can take the freeze dried, sterilized poop of healthy people that have a much more complex ecosystem than I do. And in theory, there's a component of that that's helping me balance out or provide nutrients to my very sad kind of lonely island that is not as diverse. I would
Yeah.
say the only thing about this paradigm that I want to clarify is we think of the microbiome as live, and a lot of money has been spent on focusing on live probiotics. But it turns out that that's not the whole story. And you can support my sad, lonely island microbiome with just signaling molecules so that I pick up new
Hmm.
things from the air and the environment. And so I don't actually need a full fecal transplant. I can just have the postbiotics, and
Yeah.
that will get me really far in terms of health and signaling and supporting that ecosystem. And so the theory that you need to completely introduce new species, I think, is we're moving a little bit away from that in some circles.
I think we're also moving away from, um, I would say, putting specific specific bacteria or specific strains of bacteria as the holy grail, and rather trying to understand how we create a very diverse kind of I would say creating kind of some kind of pressure to evolve and to adapt on that system on a more regular basis, rather than saying, "Oh, I really need fill in the blank."
Right. And it turns out we don't know what fill in the blank means because
Uh
they're
huh.
always swapping genes. And
Yeah.
so you may have something else besides Akkermansia that does the same metabolite,
Yeah,
makes the
I
same
wanted to
metabolite.
stay away from saying acromantia because that's like the half of Instagram is people
I mean,
praising
Akkermansia is
acromantia.
awesome and
Hmm.
cool. And I really respect a lot what they've done in terms of bringing the narrative about a keystone species
Hmm.
in. But I think completely fixating on the names, I think about it like if you have the names of 6 kids in a kindergarten classroom, if they're at nap time, what they're doing to the environment is very different than like after cake and a birthday party. And so we need to move away from caring what the names of the bugs are and think about more what they're doing metabolically and what the precursors are, what the food is we're feeding them, because that's going to impact how they impact us.
Yeah.
So polyphenols, you think about resveratrol, you think about, you know, urolithin A and all these other things that we are associating with longevity. And like, those are in some respect precursors or
Yeah.
postbiotics that are a reflection of this healthy ecosystem, getting the
Hmm.
right nutrients, getting the broccoli sprout that gets converted to the thing
Yeah.
that turns down the
Yeah. So perfect.
inflammatory signaling.
Yeah. Turmeric, just as a curcumin,
Yeah.
just as like I think the darling of those hormetic, um, I would say, signaling molecules that we ingest. Definitely. And maybe to introduce a perspective, let's see what you think about that perspective. You know, ever since the selfish gene came out by Malcolm Gladwell, we are we enjoy looking at genes as their own preservation mechanisms, and if you would, we hold within us genes that as a single gene are 250,000 years old or anything like that. And also our microbiome obviously is meant to um, is meant to be a kind of a unbroken chain of bacteria, if you would, obviously from the environment, but also from mother to son and daughter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, going down that proverbial lineage. But not only that lineage that predominantly lived in the same environment and needed to kind of amass certain bacteria and certain reactions that interact with that environment. It's not the environment that we have now, that I can
Yeah.
decide tomorrow that I am moving to Timbuktu, or I don't know, anywhere else. By the way, Timbuktu probably I would need completely different microbiome. Yeah, so the idea of us creating a system that is that specifically addresses the the demands of our modern living is almost, you could really call it biohacking, because you really are looking at what what our bodies have evolved to do, the
Mhm.
discrepancy in the modern world, and trying to balance the two in a scientific way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in many ways, it's a miracle we're doing as well as we
Yeah.
are. And I think in large part that adaptive ability is because of our microbiome. We're 100 microbe genes to one human gene. And if
Hmm.
we start to think about our microbiome as an extension of us, as its metabolic activity, there's so many things we can't do with our human genes alone that
Hmm.
we have co-evolved in a synergistic way to pick up from the microbes doing it. And a lot of that is breaking down things in the environment, telling us whether they're harmful or not, inducing inflammation and or converting them into nutrients for us. So
Hmm.
our gut and our skin are reservoirs for building blocks of all the nutrients our mitochondria need throughout our body.
Hmm.
And when I think about how cool that is, we we have to we have to think about the microbiome if we're trying to optimize, right? And we have to revisit these old paradigms of, you know, Lamarckian evolution versus Darwinian evolution. And maybe this is a little wonky, but like, so Darwin was the theory of evolution that it's a gene it's a random mutation, and each generation, if that mutation is good, it gets passed on to the next
Hmm.
generation. And Lamarck was battling with him during that period of time about a theory of evolution where within a lifetime you could change your genes.
Yes.
So the giraffe was stretching its neck, and if it stretched its neck enough during its life, its baby would inherit a longer neck. And Lamarck
Yeah.
was basically
NBA
proving,
players are told because they tried to dunk their entire life or something like that.
but the bacteria are essentially our real life Lamarckian evolution adapting. I mean, they're
Hmm.
not they're using Darwinian evolutionary rules, but they're adapting with us and changing our genes epigenetically.
Yeah.
Epigenetically meaning modulating, what we have and how it's read to be adaptive to our environment. And so if you want to, hone your epigenetic modulation to be as healthy as possible, the best tools we're going to get at that are bacteria derived signaling molecules, because that's what they were developed for, was to help us as a host succeed within our lifetime, not just reproduce, because they're living in and on us.
Yeah. So absolutely. So I must admit, we use postbiotics in our some of our products,
Mhm.
and the first challenge is that we don't even emphasize that. First of all, because we believe the conversation is not there, and we actually have some ingredients that we know to be good for the skin, and just really we don't talk about them yet because we don't feel like there's any common ground with the consumer. I think ectoin, which is a protein that structures water around protein, is another one that we only started talking about recently because we know other companies are using it too now. Postbiotics, that's number one. The second is we chose postbiotics that are from fermentation, derived from lactobacillus or other types of bacteria, and not from obviously human fecal matter because of the, again, more challenging conversation around it. So I would like to ask you two questions. First of all, maybe we should start with, even though you did repeat a few times that those are signaling molecules, I call them the exosomes of bacteria, if you would. But what are postbiotics, and then why fecal matter, or in general? Yeah. So let's start with that.
Yeah. So postbiotics were defined by ISAP as a probiotic or a bacteria that's been shown to have health benefit, something to that effect, and then they're heat killed.
Yeah.
I think that beyond that definition, it's helpful to think about postbiotics as more importantly, the secondary bacterial metabolites that
Yeah.
bacteria make to signal and communicate with us. But
Hmm.
that's, you know, there's nuance in that definition. But I think from a consumer perspective, it's easy to say prebiotics are the food, probiotics are the bugs, and postbiotics are the things that the bugs make when they eat the food. So prebiotic, probiotic, postbiotic is just a very logical
Yeah.
flow. And you don't get into there's a scientific definition and marking definition for things oftentimes. And this is a space in particular where that's happening.
Yeah.
But when I say postbiotic, I'm mostly referring to the signaling molecule secondary metabolites that bacteria in particular, commensal bacteria, are making. And so when you are talking about postbiotics, you're probably talking about anti-inflammatory signaling
Yeah.
molecules that come from lactic acid bacteria or
Yes.
lactobacillus or whatever. Why did we choose stool? Well, we were working in fecal transplant, and it's really powerful and it's really complicated. And I think a good analogy is we've been trying to synthesize blood for a long time, and we don't. I am a big avid fantasy reader, and I think about like True Blood and all the stories about like in a parallel universe we would synthesize blood, but we haven't in the real world because it's just too complicated. We don't understand it on a basic biology
Hmm.
level enough. And the same is true of stool. And so if you're looking for the best mixture of postbiotics, best being we don't know what makes things good or bad, but we're reverse engineering from something we know is effective, which is fecal transplant, towards something that we think theoretically could have impact. It just made sense to take healthy human stool as the starting ferment
Hmm.
as opposed to cultured bacteria. My life would be a lot easier if we
Yeah.
had cultured bacteria, but
Would you say it's almost like a full spectrum rather than an
right.
isolate, which I give an example a lot around, spermidine or around CBD or any of
Mhm.
those discussions where the finer we go, the more granular we go, trying to pin this, silver bullet or panacea type ingredient. Actually, the further away we go with the way our biological or biology functions.
And they're co-stimulating. Like the more
Yeah.
we see, if you think about an herb, it's not just that it's the curcumin in a it's the whole root and all the other things that are
Yeah.
there. And I think stool is a similarly complex thing. It doesn't have everything. Like it's still a representation of the colon microbiome. It's not the whole thing, but it's got the most complex mixture, including, this dark matter. There's many species of bacteria that live in our gut as commensals that we can't culture. And
Hmm.
so we have a representation of all of these bacteria that we can't get postbiotics from extrinsically, and we can't control their food. And so instead, we have healthy people that are eating a healthy diet and using that as the fermentation for these postbiotics.
Hmm. I understand. Are there any, what are some of the results as far as basically general health, but also as far as, I would say, these tenets of, optimal performance, resilience,
Mhm.
and maybe visual appearance of vibrancy that you experience, working with, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'll answer that two ways. We've done preclinical work in C. elegans,
Hmm.
and we have really cool data that the poop postbiotic mixture is super antioxidant. And when put on the model system for longevity, it actually outperforms resveratrol and rapamycin in making the worms
Wow.
wiggle longer. So it's better than rapamycin at health span. We
Wow.
haven't, yeah, it's super cool. I was very surprised, to be honest. But we did one of those preclinical. We would need to validate that, and we are thinking about like how we're going to look into this. But even preliminarily, it was really exciting. And then it will protect those worms from poisoning by paraquat, which is an oxidative stress agent, really effectively. And so on a mechanistic side, we're looking down the route of how can this improve health span through mitochondria support, antioxidant support, microbiome modulation. Clinically, patients are using this to support gut dysbiosis
Mhm.
in many ways. And one of the things that we're going to pursue and look into more is just people reporting that their sleep is better, their energy is better, um, their poops feel better. Really simple, basic things that are a reflection of vitality. We don't have good, like, objective data on skin health or things like that, but we're doing a lot of extrapolating of when you feel better, and your gut's healthier, the
Yeah.
whole climate of this microbiome shifts, right? And on endurance, we're really interested in that in terms of whether or not this would support people, doing bef- bonking essentially.
Yeah.
How do you, right, protect people in an ultra marathon or, you know, doing extreme sports and what their recovery time is? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm super interested in it just because the antioxidant potency of these, especially in combination, seem to be like off the charts
Yeah. Well,
relative to.
the reason I asked, and the reason I defined them as tenants, because these three tenants, we really, the clouds are starting to clear, and we really understand that these are three tenants that we can really extrapolate how something will end up affecting, long-term skin health. So obviously, I think I don't know about the immediate, but the experiential skin quality obviously is a no-brainer. But endurance is very interesting because endurance is a very telling signal of a relationship with oxygen, and energy, obviously energy production, orange oxygen carrier. It's almost like you cannot cheat endurance, right? Obviously, and obviously, people like Peter Attia or other scientists, or even the major researchers of longevity look at VO2 max as part of their kind of formula to assess someone's health span or lifespan, trajectory. But I think one of the things that is overlooked right now when we're talking about skin health is resilience, especially obviously like immune system resilience, but overall resilience to pathogens,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
not only that they rob you of uh, of your essential nutrients, anything from like um, EPA to again like aging increasing senescent cells, aging your
Yeah.
immune system, etc. Also, we know that people age in spurts the same way kids have growth spurts. Aging, especially skin aging, does happen in spurts where
Mm.
we can look well or the same, obviously day after day, but then there is a Bora Bora vacation, or again we're under the weather, maybe we contracted, obviously there was a virus going around a few years ago that most people know about, and or we have obviously like an emotional event that is very traumatic. All of those things, as far as like resilience, are these laps of resilience really age you significantly faster, and these are one of the things that is overexpressed as far as like skin health, and that is why the communication around resilience, I think, is so important in general, obviously, but
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
people who are interested in skin health. What about emotional resilience? Is there any? Obviously, this is, I think, the most popular. I think after like leaky gut a few years ago, maybe
Mhm.
like a decade ago, in autoimmune responses, etc. I think the emotional aspect of gut health is the most popular to discuss.
Like
Am I
gut-brain
correct? Do you
access, you mean? Like gut-brain access and
gut
anxiety
brain
and depression?
access,
Okay.
and obviously like yes, and we can even talk about like gut inflammation and mood,
Mhm.
but really gut brain access, I think it's like the most
Yeah, I mean,
discussed.
I'll be very honest. I have continuously been surprised in
Yeah.
this journey. Um, and the more we learn, we colloquially, meaning like research, the more the gut brain axis connection is really being represented clearly as bi-directional,
Yeah.
and super important, right? Um, Even just the concept of things like IBS contributing to anxiety and depression was kind of an unheard of thing prior to this body of work around the microbiome.
Hmm.
But I think now that we can say, okay, clearly the gut can impact these things and seems to be really profound at doing it, it makes total sense that having the right nutrients and not the bad guys creating neurotoxins essentially, or the wrong excitatory signaling, is important for brain health and resiliency and, um, you know again, being resilient to a perturbation. I love that concept of the skin, going in spurts, because that's how all the rest of our health is. I don't think about that in terms of skin health, but it totally makes sense that you have this curve just like blood sugar, right? And like the
Hmm.
more extreme the spike or the
Hmm.
perturbation, the more extreme that edge of damage is going to be.
Yeah.
And so if you can take the curve or the sine wave and shorten it a little bit with more
Hmm.
resilience, because you don't get kicked over into that inflammatory cycle or a period of stress like externally or from, I mean, I think like mold or
Yeah.
travel, or I've just been on planes traveling. All of that is stress. And of course, our gut being resilient is going to impact our ability to not have such extreme waves. And I mean, I don't know about your podcast in particular, but just taking for granted, I'm thinking about the story of like, I lived my life with pretty bad IBS, and I used to be horribly anxious on
Hmm.
planes and, panic attacks and stuff. And my lived experience was that when my gut felt better, I was less anxious flying.
Yeah.
And so I would be really conscientious about making sure I didn't eat the things that made my gut mad and all that stuff going into flight so that I wasn't miserable flying. And that's my experience, but it's a reflection of this broader understanding we have of the bidirectionality of the gut and the brain. And the neuropod cells, I got to see the scientist who discovered and wrote the original article in 2018 on neuropod cells, which is like kind of a dorky celebrity crush thing, but so cool, right? So we have these little neuronal cells that poke into the gut. And this was only, a few years ago, we discovered that they have synaptic signaling to our brain directly.
Hmm.
It's not that there's just these postbiotics getting into our blood and going to our brain. Like the bacteria are, you know, emailing direct electronically to our parts of our brain signals from the gut. And so, the body of work that's being done on gut brain axis, and just thinking about, I was at a conference for the last 4 days about microbiome science and seeing the neuropod researcher and other people who've done a lot of the seminal work. It's like, we are just at the tip of the iceberg, and it
Hmm.
totally makes sense logically, but it's very counter to the paradigm that it's all in your head. And I go back to, like, it makes me feel much less like I am being told there's something I can't do anything about. I have much more agency on my experience of depression
Hmm.
and anxiety than I did before, because there's a physiologic chemical component that um, I can biohack and improve, but it's not just me like meditating more when I'm sitting on a plane.
No, I mean probably a part of it. I mean, again, you're going to improve your gut by meditating or by lowering, cortisol or anything like that. But I think, as you said very candidly and beautifully in the beginning, where I meet you and I both. We meet a lot of people with a lot of products, and I
Mhm.
become a little bit allergic to. Um, and I think I've mentioned it here before in the context of skincare, where there is, I'll give an example on ourselves. We've developed this NAD precursor based skincare, and obviously it was extremely tempting to just shove it into every product that we came out with. But the problem is that that there is no one molecule that's going to completely solve all of that, of all of people's problems, right? And within the anti-aging space, and for sure within the alternative health space, we meet a lot of people who claim that they've discovered the panacea, right? So I think
Never believe those people. Never believe them.
never, by the way, never, ever, ever. If there is a skincare product that has the same ingredient in every product, either they can get it very affordably, which is fine, that's great, or there is a laziness to the, I would say, to the project behind the company, and that's by the way, no offense. You could, as a consumer, you can use one of those products, the one that you like more, but I think you get my point, and everyone gets my point. But what I want to say, it's a beautiful discussion to say, hey, this is the tapestry of how you should treat your gut and your overall health through treating your gut. And this is a very impactful piece of the puzzle. Do you feel you are creating an impact in people? What is your experience as far as impact?
I mean, I don't think the Thaena biotic is the panacea. I think the concept of taking poop and sterilizing it and defining health and opening up this dialogue
Uh-huh.
around autoclaving bacteria is the radical part of what we're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm excited about the science. I
Hmm.
did not mean to start a company and sell a supplement. That was not the intention, nor it was it, I just think that it's a cool space, and it's allowed me an opportunity to raise money and do science and have these conversations. But I care about public health. I care about agency and reducing suffering. And so for me, it's a way to have a conversation about, I like, just the nuance and complexity. We live in a world right now where nuance is really difficult, right?
Hmm.
And philosophizing as an art maybe isn't at the center, but I think that there's a lot of benefit in using something like the microbiome and skin health and chronic disease as a way to have
Hmm.
conversations about the nuance of
Hmm.
biology and the individualism of our chemistry and the philosophy of public health, right? Because if you and I wanted to really help skincare the most, we would probably work in environmental quality, right? Like air
Yeah.
quality or something
Yeah.
like that. But we can't, or it's maybe not the right choice for us. So we're going to work around having these conversations about stressors and oxidants and having the right tools in the toolbox so that if you are going to get on a plane, put on some Young Goose skin cream to mitigate
Hmm.
the effects of the UV radiation or whatever, or
Yeah.
sunscreen, what, the nuances of that. And if you're going to be traveling and you get, backed up because you don't eat enough fiber, maybe a poop pill is the right tool in your toolbox to make sure you have a regular bowel movement. Because
Hmm.
when you are not, poop and skin, pooping every day and what your poop looks like and what your skin looks like are two like really powerful metrics of overall health.
Yes.
And so whatever you can do to modulate those two are going to, um, help us make those decisions about cost benefit. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
No, I
like,
love it. And by the way, you actually, I think it's a very cool anecdote. Like, before you look in the mirror, what you're going to look in the mirror is going to give you an image of, you know, the maybe how much water you drink, how you slept at night, and give you some parameters that are equivalent to how well your skin is behaving, and kind of a look into the future. But so does the poop. If you look in your toilet, I
mhm.
think it is as important to look in your toilet, and it's going to give you as much insight. So it's a pretty cool anecdote. And connecting to that, there are different countries that have different toilet shapes because they have different um, practices around, again, around examining their poop. Right. I know in Germany the toilet is like super elongated because they're more. I mean, they're more inclined to analyze their poop.
I became a naturopath and it's normal for me to ask people about their poop, but we definitely need to normalize conversations about gut health in the way we totally have conversations about skin health. And the
Hmm.
skin is an extension of the gut. I really love the analogy that the human body is a donut,
Uh-huh.
and
Yes.
if you think about our colon, like mouth to anus is just skin, right? It's
Hmm.
just the inside of the donut. And then our skin is all epithelium. So the same basic biology applies.
Hmm.
And like, microbiome ecology applies on the skin the same way it does in the gut. And I think people vastly underappreciate our environmental exposure on the skin because that's an absorptive organ. We
Yeah.
have to, it's a soapbox we don't need to get on here, but man, the cosmetic industry, what a mess.
And yeah, not only that, what I speak about pretty often around, um, so we coined the term leaky skin, which now is getting some, excuse me, some other people like the great and powerful Kiran Krishnan talking about, etc. But really, it's not like leaky gut. Leaky gut is particle leakage, right? From to make it very simple, leaky skin is information leakage. So we actually have the skin brain axis that is being hijacked by different molecules, or if your skin is overreactive, it cannot respond, it cannot read signals from the environment very well, and it's going to communicate directly to your HPA axis, which
Mhm.
is the stress center in the brain, and really stress your brain out. It's going to age your body because your skin is misinforming
Right.
what's going on in the environment. When we get older, we have senescent cells. We have other things that are hijacking that highway and literally aging our body through our skin, aging our brain first and then our body. So I think it is an extremely important conversation, and obviously the gut skin axis is a very important axis. Um,
Well, and again, I take for granted that like I'm so something I learned this weekend that's really cool
mhm.
is these neuronal cells in our gut. We used to think that they were for just nutrient signaling, right? And it turns out this particular scientist, and I'd have to go look at my notes, but I can send it to you after the fact. Turns out that
Hmm.
there's EEC cells, so enteroendocrine, neuronal cells that are specific to just microbial signaling that impact the brain. So they're not there to absorb nutrients. They have different receptors. And those receptors are impacted by a whole variety of microbial signaling, and then they impact brain health. And I don't know if this is true or not or has been researched, but let's assume the skin has similar neuronal
Hmm.
cells. We know that we are sensing things from the environment around us. And if the microbe ecosystem on your skin surface is got bad guys, pissed off, not making what you need, you are sending signals probably to your brain. you know, let's just keep expanding our understanding of biology, because we used to think we were only looking for nutrients, but it turns out now there's a whole class of skin, gut, brain access stuff that's just looking for the right microbe signaling.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, of course, it's going to impact your brain long
Uh-huh.
term. What your
100%.
environment is. Yeah.
And you are your brain, everything starts in the brain. So Andrea, what are some, so you're at the forefront of this revolution of kind of poop centered revolution. What are some of the responses you're getting, right? Like, yeah, again, I love the conversation starter, but how are some of these conversations look like?
Yeah. And I will caveat that with, I think of us as at the front of the revolution of the postbiotics from poop,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's lots of other people doing amazing work in traditional fecal transplant,
Mm-hmm.
in poop derived bacteria, poop derived LBPs, things like that. Like, we
Yeah.
made a really, Thaena, the company name, is actually the goddess of death, because we are killing the bugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dead. So we are only looking at the chemistry. Let's pick one thing, right, and focus on it. We thousands of molecules, but we're only looking at the postbiotics. And they're in really small quantities. And so what we're seeing that's super interesting is, one, that it does anything at all, to be quite frank. When we started, the idea that you could autoclave a really small amount of stool and give it to somebody every day over time, and it would impact health at all, symptom picture at all, patient experience at all, was very radical.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been working with patients now for many, many years, since 2019, 2020, with the sterilized product, and in the iteration of Thaena now for several years. And it is always fascinating to get patient feedback that it's helping them with their sleep. That really caught me for a loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense that it's helping people have a healthy bowel movement, again, based on patient anecdotal. And I want to be clear on caveating that this is a dietary supplement. We're not treating any diseases and making any claims, because we haven't gone that far down the rabbit hole of research, but we have good anecdotal stories from patients about how it's impacting these traditional tenets of longevity, right? How they feel energy wise, fatigue, sleep, um,
Yeah.
whether they're, experiencing anxiousness, all those kind of things that patients are doing pre and post testing on, along with, other tools that impact. And to be frank, my scientist brain is like, I'm not really going to believe anything completely until even clinical data is a little suspect for me from a
Mm-hmm.
molecular side. Like, too many variables. People are crazy. I don't really trust people, but
But maybe they're less crazy when they take the poop pill. Anyway, yeah.
maybe. So yeah, we're seeing all kinds of really interesting stuff, and we're going to keep doing a lot of work, and we want to understand the mechanism. We want to think about the gut as a redox source
Mm-hmm.
of the gut, and the microbiome as a source of antioxidants, and leaky gut in the framework of a redox imbalance. And so that's a big part of what we're thinking about, and patients are giving us feedback on, and then collecting, good data, and thinking about this from, like, what are the best prebiotics for brain health? What are the best prebiotics to give a healthy gut, to make the right postbiotics for skin,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of cool. We're seeing a lot of cool things. Um I'm a little avoidant around giving you like too many details because it's sort of early, but
Yeah.
it's a provider supplement. And so we have practitioners providing the supplement to patients. And then I get a chance to talk to the providers and get their feedback on stuff. And it's been really cool to hear them say, this is really helping me with this cohort of people. And it always kind of blows my mind.
That's incredible. So really, how can people procure this
Yeah. So it's,
Thaena?
it's, it's provider. So you have to have a provider who can link you to the Thaena website to purchase. And we
Mhm.
have a list of providers, or you can tell your provider about Thaena and show them the website. Functional medicine docs, nutritionists, health coaches. We kind of have a broad net, but the idea is to keep it in the realm of educated health practitioners so that it can be delivered in a way that's contextualized, right? Because
Mhm.
it's not a panacea. Um, it's not direct to consumer yet. And so you need to do the legwork to find somebody. But contact us. We're a small team, but we care a lot. And so if you're a patient and you're really interested in this, I encourage people to email us and contact us at the website, which is just thana.com.
Great. And we're going to have obviously links in the show notes. Well, Andrea, I obviously we can have basically we have an off-air podcast every time we meet. Um, so it was nice to record one, and I know you guys are going to do great. You have an amazing team, amazing product, and I'm happy to tell everyone I told you so. Like, I don't know, in a year.
Well, I
So
appreciate the philosophical conversation. I love the skin microbiome, and it's fun for me to learn too new things. So, my pleasure. I'm sure we could have continued to talk for many hours, but
yeah,
um, this can be the tip of the iceberg, which
for
is great.
sure. Amen. So thank you again. Thana.com. Reach out to them. Find a provider. Tell your provider about them, and let's put them on the map.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everyone.